You are now under arrest. Please sit down and wait for instruction.
I was just going through some of the folks that we've pulled off the streets to deport out of this country because of President Trump's focus on making America safe again. Here we have a guy named Gonzalez, who's been convicted of sodomy of children less than 13 years of age. He has been sentenced to prison, but he is out of our country now, thanks to President Trump. Another guy here who is arrested and has been removed, but he was convicted for possession of distributing.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota. And there's one person who can end this now.
Tim Walz, ICE, FBI, Kash Patel, Minneapolis, with all of them in the center of a storm, ask yourself this: what really went wrong in Minnesota, and why is a federal immigration escalation now triggering violence, secret chats, and national outrage? In late January 2026, Minneapolis, once a city known for its culture and grit, quickly became the front line of a national crisis. You got 2 Minneapolis residents that have been fatally shot during federal immigration enforcement operations, including a 37-year-old ICU nurse, and tens of thousands have poured into the streets in protest. Now, these deaths have accelerated already intense tensions between state leadership and federal law enforcement, with Governor Tim Walz publicly criticizing aggressive enforcement and Donald J. Trump's administration defending its actions. Now, at the same time, leaked signal communications, the so-called signal chats, have exposed organized protest coordination and panic among participants. On top of that, reports of protests storming a Minneapolis hotel over rumors of federal agent occupancy have swept national headlines. Is this unrest simply protest, or is something deeper happening here that we're not aware of? A collapse of leadership, a breakdown of federal state cooperation, and a moment that could redefine immigration enforcement in America? Be sure to drop a like for the video and subscribe. Really appreciate your support. So this is the moment that everything changed in Minnesota, and it wasn't the protests, it wasn't the leaks, or even the violence. It was the phone call. So President Donald J. Trump publicly confirmed that Governor Tim Walz called him directly and asked to work together on immigration enforcement. That's not cooperation. That is capitulation. Governors don't just call presidents unless leverage has been flipped. And the timing here matters. This call came right after ICE agents were attacked, after signal chats leaked, and after federal investigators began circling. Now, for months, Tim Walz used rhetoric. You guys remember it, right? Drop a yes down below if you remember that. Tim Walz leaned into defiance, but once exposure replaced narrative control, the tone collapsed overnight. This wasn't leadership meeting leadership. This was a governor realizing the federal government now had visibility, authority, and momentum. So when the call happened, Minnesota had already crossed from protest into consequence, and Tim Walz knew it. So the signal chats, they were where this story actually stops being theoretical and it actually becomes operational. So what leaked wasn't ideology. It was infrastructure. I mean, these weren't like angry group messages. These were coordinated systems using Signal, complete with alerts, symbols, timing cues, even daily instructions tied directly to ICE activity. Now, this mirrored counter surveillance, not protest organizing. Participants shared locations, tracked federal movements, and warned each other in real time. And critically, names tied to state and local government, they began appearing in those threads. That is when panic set in.
Okay, so this is breaking news. So you and the FBI and perhaps other intelligence agencies are fully aware of this coordinated effort to attack federal law enforcement, to impede them and potentially insurrect. And so there is now an open investigation into these chats and into this coordinated network.
Yeah, what I can say.
Some of them are fleeing. Some of them are very scared now. You can see their chats. They're very, very worried now that they have been exposed.
So here's what really changed everything. The fear didn't show up before the leaks. It showed up after. So once participants realized encrypted didn't mean invisible, conversations quickly shifted from action to exit. This is why people started talking about fleeing, because coordination itself became evidence and exposure erased the illusion of protection. Now, there's this parallel that's happening here that a lot of people don't even notice at first. So if you were recently asked a simple question, why am I still paying for this? Not about politics, about Medicare. And when they finally looked a little bit closer, the answer was obvious. They were stuck in an outdated Medicare plan that no longer fit their life, but kept charging them anyway. That's exactly what Chapter helps people to uncover. And this is exactly why I partner with Chapter. They review your Medicare coverage and they show you where you're paying for things that no longer serve you. And they also share better options that may already exist that you may not already know about. Now, most people don't even realize it until someone walks them through it. And once they do, they wish they had checked sooner. And this is why so many people are calling the phone number at the bottom of your screen to reach my friends over at Chapter at 909-563-8279 or by clicking the link down below right now to go to askchapter.org/Ron to take a look before another year locks in. All right, so let's go back to Minnesota because this is where things escalate. Now, this is where it actually stops being symbolic. The Minneapolis hotel didn't become a flashpoint by accident. Hotels matter because they're often used by federal logistics, temporary staging, agent housing, processing operations. And once rumors spread that ICE personnel were inside, the situation escalated real fast. So what started as protest activity quickly shifted into confrontation. Crowds moved from chanting to surrounding the building. Panic followed when it became clear nobody actually knew who was inside or who was in control. Now that uncertainty is exactly what made the moment combustible. No speeches, no press conferences, just real-time breakdown of order driven by assumption and amplification. And when local leadership couldn't immediately de-escalate, federal presence loomed larger by default. That hotel wasn't just a building, it became a symbol of lost control and everybody felt it. Now, the fatal enforcement encounter is exactly where the temperature changed nationally. This isn't a place for speculation, only consequence. A federal operation resulted in a civilian death and immediately the ground rules shifted. After fatalities, timelines compress. Federal reviews accelerate. Political cover evaporates. Now, for Governor Tim Walz, this collapsed what remained of his rhetorical runway. There is a difference between criticizing enforcement policy and doing so after blood has been spilled. The margin disappears. This is when Washington steps in more aggressively, not rhetorically, but procedurally. Now, from that point forward, this was no longer just a state-level conflict. It quickly became a federal accountability issue, overseen at the highest levels. And this is why the phone call to President Donald J. Trump didn't come weeks later. It came really fast because once lives are lost, the system moves whether leaders are ready to or not. Let me ask you something most people still aren't asking. How is it possible that the electric vehicle industry, the backbone of America's future manufacturing, defense systems, and even energy independence, is still dependent on China for the single largest component inside of every battery? Not lithium, not cobalt, graphite. Now, over half the weight of every EV battery is graphite, and for decades, America outsourced almost all of it. And now, as President Donald J. Trump continues pushing America First supply chains, that vulnerability is finally being addressed. And this brings us to today's sponsor. The video today is sponsored by Outside the Box Capital Incorporated on behalf of Nouveau Monde Graphite Incorporated, currently listed under ticker symbol NMG. Now, Nouveau Monde Graphite is positioning itself to become North America's first fully integrated, carbon-neutral producer of graphite anode material, from mine to battery, right here in Quebec. They control two critical assets. First, the Matawini mine. This is a high-grade, open-pit graphite deposit north of Montreal, construction-ready and designed for large-scale production. Second, you've got the Bécancour battery material plant, located inside of Quebec's rapidly growing battery hub, right alongside names like GM, POSCO, BASF, and Ford EcoPro. Now, this facility is designed to turn graphite concentrate into purified anode-ready material, using Quebec's abundant hydroelectric power instead of the high-emission chemical processes used overseas. But here's where this story really takes a serious turn. The government of Canada has signed a binding 7-year offtake agreement with Nouveau Monde Graphite for 30,000 tons per year from Matawini Phase 2. Half of that volume is take or pay at fixed North American price. And Canada even participates in a profit sharing structure above that price. Now, that's not a subsidy. That is a government treating graphite like oil, steel, and uranium, a strategic material. And that aligns directly with the policies pushed under President Donald J. Trump, who has repeatedly warned that America just cannot remain dependent on hostile supply chains for critical infrastructure. Graphite doesn't just power EVs. It's used in defense systems, nuclear technology, steel making, industrial composites, and even advanced manufacturing. And yet, it remains one of the most misunderstood and undervalued materials materials in the market. Nouveau Monde Graphite has already secured strategic partnerships with Panasonic Energy, General Motors, and Mitsubishi Chemical Group, validating both demand and technical credibility, not on hype, but on qualification. Now, this is not a short-term trade strategy. This is a long-duration supply chain replacement story, and it's unfolding exactly as America resets its industrial priorities. Now, before we wrap up, guys, a quick disclaimer. I am not an investment advisor. This video is not investment advice. Investors should always conduct their own due diligence and consult with qualified professionals before making any investment decisions. If you want real American energy independence, real manufacturing security, and real execution, this is the kind of story worth understanding. So this is the moment the story leaves protest politics and it enters federal consequence. FBI Director Kash Patel, he did not hedge. He didn't downplay. He confirmed active investigations into what he described as coordinated and organized activity that are tied directly to attacks on federal law enforcement. Those words matter. Coordinated turns chaos into conspiracy. Organized turns protest into structure. And when Patel acknowledged that participants are now scared and fleeing, it confirmed something crucial. Fear didn't exist before exposure. It arrived after it.
And I've also told stories that, you know, in situations, if I knew I was on camera and I could get away from a confrontation, knowing that I had the ability to defend myself, I would turn and hightail it and run rather than ever have to pull out a weapon. If you have a weapon, do you belong in an environment that is as contentious as this weekend? Do you bear responsibility knowing that you have a firearm with you, what that could do to a situation?
Well, Sean, like you said, we truly, fully support the Second Amendment, people's right to bear arms. But when you enter into a situation, a volatile situation like Minnesota, where there were riots on the streets and people attacking federal law enforcement officers and ramming them with vehicles and continued criminality and burning down and literally destroying federal vehicles and stealing information, we have to ask people what's prudential, what's smart. And it's not smart to go out there with a fully loaded weapon. We're just saying be careful and be reasonable, like you've outlined. If you have a right to a permit for a firearm, that's okay. But you cannot incite violence and you cannot break the law and attack federal law enforcement officers.
The FBI wasn't reacting to ideology. It was following digital trails, financial links, and communication logs. And once that threshold got crossed, this stops being about opinion or outrage. It becomes about statutes, charges, and evidence. This is when Minnesota stopped setting the narrative and when Washington took control of it. So this is where it got worse. Allegations of Canada-linked funding moved the story into a completely different category. I mean, foreign money doesn't just complicate optics, it changes legal gravity. So what might have been handled as civil disorder now touches national security thresholds. So the claims are not about protest donations. They're actually about logistical support, coordination assistance, and indirect facilitation. Now that distinction matters because once the money crosses borders and intersects with like encrypted operational chats and federal jurisdiction expands instantly. So you don't need massive sums for this to matter. You just need intent, coordination, and traceability. This is why this revelation landed so hard. It reframed Minnesota unrest not as isolated anger, but as something potentially influenced from outside the country. And that is a line federal agencies are obligated to pursue aggressively. So by this point, Governor Tim Walz, he had run out of exits. The rhetoric failed, the protests escalated, the signal chats were exposed, and the FBI was no longer observing from the sidelines. Public exposure stripped Tim Walz of narrative control. And once that happens, the clock starts ticking fast. So this wasn't about saving face anymore. This was about damage containment. When federal investigations expand, governors don't negotiate through press conferences. They pick up the phone, and this is exactly why Donald J. Trump didn't chase Walz. Tim Walz chased President Donald J. Trump, and that distinction matters right there.
I mean, thousands of people are marching through Minneapolis. They are targeting the Border Patrol. I mean, it feels like the rhetoric and the protesting is only ramping up. What is your advice to the people right now who are outraged that this is a second killing at the hands of Border Patrol in 2 weeks?
As Christy said, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence. We will, of course, always protect your First Amendment speech. And if you peacefully protest, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you have seen a trend here, not just in Minnesota, but across the country, in these protests turning into violent scenarios and people attacking law enforcement. That's when you go over the line, and that's when law enforcement steps in.
Well, you know, I mean, thousands of people are marching through Minneapolis. They are targeting.
This wasn't reconciliation or unity. It was containment, a recognition that the federal government now had visibility into what the state could no longer manage internally. So once that revelation sits in, cooperation stops being optional and it becomes survival. So what unfolded in Minnesota quietly rewrote the federal-state balance in real time. Sanctuary posture met federal enforcement reality, and the outcome wasn't theoretical, it was operational. President Trump, he didn't threaten, he applied pressure through results. Other cities, they tell the story. Washington, D.C., Memphis, New Orleans, federal cooperation happened without chaos. Protests didn't spread, they stalled. Minnesota, by contrast, isolated itself through defiance, and the unrest concentrated instead of multiplying. So, cooperation reduces volatility, resistance amplifies it, and once that contrast becomes visible, the political space collapses quickly. Minnesota didn't just become a national movement, it became a cautionary example, and this is why this movement mattered beyond state lines. It showed how fast authority reasserts itself when ideology collides with federal law. So when people say they started fleeing, it's easy to misunderstand what that really means. This wasn't mass panic, it was selective retreat. So once the signal chats were exposed, participants realized something very critical. Encrypted doesn't mean immune. Digital footprints doesn't disappear under subpoena, they consolidate. Panic followed the clarity, names, timestamps, coordination logs, financial trails. The moment investigators shift from monitoring to mapping, the risk calculation changes instantly. This is where ideology collapses into self-preservation. Key detail that most people miss: fear didn't exist when the movement felt protected. It only appeared after the exposure. This is because coordination itself became evidence. Now, at this point, staying visible wasn't bravery, it was liability. And this is why conversations quickly moved from organizing to exiting. Not because the cause changed, but because consequences finally arrived. Now, this story was never about Tim Walz. Minnesota is not an outlier, it's a preview. So what you're seeing is what is happening when ideology collides with federal law in an age of digital coordination. Narratives move fast. Exposure moves even faster than that. And the lesson is simple and it's uncomfortable. States can posture, activists can organize, but once federal statutes are triggered, the system doesn't negotiate with slogans. It moves through process, quietly, relentlessly. This is why President Donald J. Trump didn't need spectacle here. Authority reasserted itself through visibility and law. Minnesota became the example, not because it exploded, but because it couldn't contain what it had unleashed. And this won't be the last test either. Other states are watching, other movements are watching. The question isn't whether this dynamic will repeat, it's who learns from it first. That's the update, guys. Drop a like for the video, subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.